All right. Hey there, outliers. Niiamah Shang here, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of your podcast. I say letting me, but it's really letting us because today we have an incredible panel of outliers here on the Outliers Edge Roundtable. So, without further ado, I want to make sure you get a chance to get to know and get to experience some of the people that we've been having an incredible conversation with here today. Why don't we go around and bring on our roundtable participants? We'll start off with Talon, then we'll go to Carman.
Yeah, of course. Hey, y'all. I'm Talon. I run a business called Audacious, and I run a podcast called the Audacious Podcast. And really, my mission with that is to show people how to live a fulfilling life, how to be the change that they want to see in the world, and practically live a better life.
Thank you. Glad to have you here.
Hey, I'm Carman Murray. Healthy Teachers, Healthy Classrooms is what I'm up to. I used to have a podcast called Conversations with Carman, and I'm here to help teachers not go this alone, to be reminded that they matter most and that there's support out there for them.
Well, thank you so much, Carmen. I'm glad that you're here. Bob, we'll go to you, and then we'll wrap it up with Antonio.
Yeah, my name is Bob Wischer, and I'm the relationship engineer. My company is called Men Becoming Better Men, and I did have a podcast of the same name. My mission is to help men simply become better men by unraveling their challenges and exploring their inner world to eliminate fears of failure and rejection.
My name is Dr. Antonio Harrison, aka Coach Doc. I have a podcast called Doc's Daily Dose. And that podcast is really focused on sharing reflections from my observations of the week to give people different perspectives and hope that they stop and take a breath and think for themselves as opposed to just taking in all of the external stimuli that we're given constantly. So, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Let's get this thing started off here with the focus of today. It's really look at and seeing like, how are you showing up as leaders and how are you bringing out into your messages, your impact and beyond, right? Talon, before we got started, you mentioned something about like what you had learned through your experience of creating a podcast and entrepreneurship. And so I want to actually start off with this as our opening question here for all of us. What's an unexpected lesson that you learned because you decided to create your own platform and or because you decided to step into your own leadership? What's an unexpected lesson that you learned? Talon, why don't you start us off with that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So a little backstory for me. Before I started running the Audacious podcast, I had a lot of years of experience in content creation, doing entertainment on YouTube. Grew a decent fan base from that and really just learned how to lead, how to be an entrepreneur, how to connect with my audience and relationships that I built from that as a leader there. But an unexpected lesson I learned from that is that entrepreneurship, like it can't just be for fun. It can't just be for ourselves. It has to have a purpose. So with what I was creating, with the content that I had, yeah, it was entertainment. It was lighting people's days. But after a couple of years, I stepped back and I realized, wow, I don't think that this is causing people to live better. I don't think this is bringing the change that really I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about people living out a fulfilling life. I'm passionate about people seeing their lives grow and flourish. And I realized like, wow, like this is surface level entertainment. There's nothing wrong with that, but there was no purpose behind it. And so the biggest lesson I learned from there is when we lead, we have to show others how to live.
Well, I like that. When you lead, you have to show others how to live. Oh, let's play along with this here. Carmen, I see you're unmuted. Why don't you come in and bring in your wisdom?
Well, I love, Talon, I love how you speak about what we do matters because we lead and we model. Whether we're intentionally doing things or not intentionally doing things, it doesn't matter. People are watching us. And so I think that really matters that we do use our passion and our purpose. To answer your question, one of the things that really is an unexpected lesson for me was the power of team. For me, I've been able to surround myself with amazing people, and it just continues to happen. Whether it's the people that I coach in my groups or the people I meet out in the world, there's so many amazing people out there that I get to learn from and interact with. And I super love that so much because since I stepped out of the classroom, I don't get the interaction with the kids that I used to. And so now I need to find other humans to interact with that really get me passionate about what I'm up to in supporting teachers.
Nice. Thank you there, Carmen. We'll go, Bob, I see you.
Yeah. So my unexpected lesson is, and it's something my wife actually shared with me, as a way to describe it is, and it's something you and I talked about the other day, is to be a river, not a lake. As influencers, as coaches, as leaders in the space, we tend to want to accumulate a lot of knowledge. And what I love is when people like you, give free. And you mentioned this phrase to me the other day, and it's stuck with me ever since. Give freely, and that's kind of goes directly towards what my wife said, is to be a river. When information comes in, don't just hoard it all to yourself, because a lake is going to grow stagnant. It's going to get weedy and mucky, and you're not helping anybody. But if you let that information flow through you, you're helping the greater good. You're helping other people, and spreading that knowledge and that wealth of knowledge to other people, which is what we all need to do more of.
Thanks, Bob. Antonio?
It's interesting. I was a varsity head football coach for 16 years, working inside of fitness as well. You already have a space of authority where people walk into your world and you're leading. And before I started this current podcast, I had one called 230 Dudes with a good friend of mine. And I think that's where I learned my biggest lesson in stepping into the role was that they tell you in entrepreneurship business to kind of hone your niche, right? And target your demographic. Well, what I found is, as a leader, those who choose to lead you, they make that choice of you as a leader. Your tribe finds you, no matter how hard you're targeting them. I mean, our first podcast, we got up to 30K international listeners, and our two biggest demographics were university librarians and Australian truck drivers, right? So, but we were so thankful and grateful for them when thought we were targeting 30-something-year-old average males. And it just wasn't the case. So it was just to open myself to the experience that I'm sharing something, and who it benefits is their choice, not necessarily mine.
Antonio, when you say that, I'm getting like goosebumps over here because you're reminding me of something. There was a time when I would come into these podcasts, and it would be there was an openness to it where it was like the job of my thing is to put it out into the world, and for whoever it resonates with, it resonates with, and I now I'm really curious because there is a lot of conventional wisdom of like, go hone your niche, like find exactly who your avatar is. And a lot of times I found myself not even able to get started because it was like, I don't have the answers to this. I remember actually not too long ago being in a conversation with someone and being like, if you don't have this, if you don't know the answer to this, like we can't move any further. And so I would love to ask you all here, when you didn't know, and that might even still be this very moment. But when you didn't know, like, how did you continue to like take action to move one foot in front of the other, and continue to start building what you have right now? And I'm gonna leave the mic a little bit open, otherwise we're gonna probably end up in the same same order here. So let me leave the mic a little bit open, and feel free, like if there's something someone says that like that piques your interest, feel free to ask a follow-up too. Like I love to keep this, I like to have all of our collective leadership grow us.
Well, maybe I'll start and we can go backwards. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
That was a tough one for me in a lot of things that I've done because I have so many different interests. And I think what I realized was it has to be something that I would personally enjoy, right? If I wouldn't listen to my own podcast, why would anyone else? So, and there still are times where I go to myself like, would I actually listen to this? And I go, no, I use short form, 10 to 15 minutes max. And it is something that makes you think I would totally listen to this. So I think of when you're saying looking for avatar, the first thing I did was look for myself as an avatar, right? Like, what would I want to listen to? What am I engaged in that fires me up, that makes me shine and feel bright? That's the thing to go after rather than I think this will make me money. I think this will work. I think this will gain a large audience, as opposed to, I really like talking about this, even if it's hummingbirds and birdhouses. Like, that's the thing I'm into, right? And so that's where it really opened up for me, was something that I would personally enjoy myself.
And so for me, I started out originally as a health coach, and I was coaching people with, nutrition and exercise and things like that. And what became very apparent to me is that I had this, I don't know, a feeling in my heart for men, and trying to understand why we kind of get into the way we get to with complacency or whatever you want to call it, and ultimately leading to suicide, which is why I really ended up leaning in hard to my niche, because I've known now 4 men who have taken their own lives in various ways, and to be able to tune into what's going on with the men in the world, and the things that we're facing, the things that we're thinking, and reasons why we're thinking, and just for a man to be able to get into that place where he gets to that hopeless spot, that he feels like he can no longer wants to be here. And don't get me wrong, the thought had crossed my mind back for me about 10 years ago, and so I can understand how people get there, but I not that I could ever do it, and I just hate hearing of people doing it. I actually heard a story this morning of a married couple that is breaking up because he's not being the man that she wants him to be, and it comes down to be as simple as that. That's why marriages break up, because one or the other are not being the person that they want to be. And I learned the hard way too, that in my first marriage, that I was not educated enough to do things the way I should have been doing them to facilitate the depth and breadth of a marriage. And that's a lot of what I work on with men now, is to help them become leaders, help them to understand what it takes, and check your check your ego at the door most of the time. And you're going to want to do some things that you don't traditionally think you should be or have to be doing, but for the greater good of the relationship, some of those things have to be done sometimes.
Bob, I appreciate you bringing all this in here and like creating more space for us to like just really bring it, because ultimately each of us here, while we might be in the space of using the current moniker of leaders or outliers or like podcasters or having a platform, like we're real people who are navigating life. And ultimately, I think that's where this all comes down to. How are we navigating this thing called life, and creating, doing it with purpose throughout it. So thanks for bringing that in here, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have anything else they want to bring in on this?
I just want to acknowledge the space that Bob holds for men. It's so powerful, so powerful. As a woman on the other side of it, it's just like, I'm so grateful that my man can do what he does and supports me so that I can really show up in the world. Like that's amazing. And I just wanted to circle back to something that Antonio said. I really appreciate this. You said you had so many different interests, and I get flack for all of my different interests all the time because I'm doing so many different things. I live on a ranch. I'm a yoga teacher. I coach teachers. I have 2 kids. I love leadership. I am involved with leadership kids, and people are like, whoa, slow down. I'm like, but I love all this stuff. And so I really appreciate that you said that. It's like, it gives me permission to go, yeah, I love all this stuff, and I can do this stuff, and I can talk about it, and it makes me human. Like that is such a big piece, is it makes me human. I just don't have to focus on one thing. And then when we talk about avatar, it's like the people who see me as this dynamic human who does interesting things in the world and is engaged, that I'm not just this kind of like one track, this is where I'm going and this is the only thing I do. So I really appreciated that. And to answer your question about when you take the action steps, when you just don't know, It's been my experience. It's just like, again, back to what do I love to do and what possibilities pop up for me is always, so it always amazes me so much what pops up for me. I've been putting out there, I want people to reach out to me. Your email showed up in my email bin. And I'm like, yeah, like, right, there's these signs, if you want to call them, or things that show up and it's like, oh yeah, this looks really cool. Let's check this out and see where it goes. So part of it is leaning into your courage and letting go of the fear of trying something new with someone that you've never met before.
No, I love what you said there. And I think a common theme here is that we're all pursuing what we're passionate about. And that we've all seen an area of the world that is broken, where things aren't right. And we know that there can be change for the better. And we're pursuing that. We're leading the way and putting those steps in front of people, saying, this is the route that you need to walk. And like, again, circling back to the question of like, how do you put those steps in front of you when you don't know where you're going? Man, I love what you said, Antonio, where it's like you're producing something that you know that you want to listen to. It's like, man, what am I passionate about? What do I want to listen to? What conversations do I want to have with people? And something that I've realized and that I'm passionate about is that we rarely talk about the things that really matter. We rarely talk about the topics and discussions that really matter. We'll talk about the economy all day. We'll talk about politics. When it comes to like living a fulfilling life, right? Being globally aware and making sure that we're aware of what's happening in the world outside of just the country that we live in, right? And thinking differently, renovating our thoughts so we're not doubling down on ourselves and criticizing ourselves beyond what we can bear. Like, these are important things. And these are conversations that need to be had so that we can remove misconceptions that people have that will ultimately lead them down the wrong path. And so just when I didn't know what to do, man, when I was like taking a step back from content creation and thinking like, man, what am I missing? What do I need to do? I started thinking about, what am I passionate about? What do I wish people would talk about more? And then just ideas started rolling. I'm like, this is it. This is it. We need to talk about how to live a better life.
If you don't mind if I add, because
Please, Antonio.
Carman sparked something in it. Excuse me if I'm speaking out of turn for anyone here, but in taking the risk to try something new, even just like being on this podcast, there's also the ability, because I'm sure all of us at some point in this process of getting here today thought to ourselves, we're not really sure, but if this isn't what we think it is, like, we're bailing out of this thing, right? Like, we're gone. Like, I'm not going to waste my time on it, right? So the ability to say, I want to try it and see what it's like and experiment and see if this is something for me, but then not feeling like you have to be stuck with it and being okay to pivot and go, nope, this isn't it. Right. I use the analogy all the time. People will be like, I want to start working out. And what's the first thing they do? They hit the treadmill. I hate running, right? Don't put me on a treadmill ever. Right. So if you try the treadmill doesn't work, move to swimming, go play some basketball, do something. Right. But the willingness to take the risk and also give yourself grace and go, it wasn't for me. I got to pivot and do something different.
And Antonio, I want to jump in there because it's so powerful when you say, if this doesn't work or isn't what's for me, that I do get to pivot and I don't just need to stop, especially when you talk about, moving your body, working out, those kind of things. If you don't like A, there are 25 other letters in the alphabet. And then we can double them up. Like, there's so many things out there that you can do. And I feel like sometimes if you feel like we need to figure it out today or this week or this year. I also really believe we've got a lifetime to figure it out, but we put so much pressure on ourselves to do it today or this week. So I think it's really important for people that are listening to be reminded, you don't have to figure it out today, and you don't have to figure it out alone.
I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point about being alone, because that's one of the things that I've found working with men is we tend to think we have it all figured out and we know, or we can figure it out, or we can Google it or whatever. And a lot of times that just, it doesn't work. You gotta have kind of like Talon was saying, you gotta have conversations, and you gotta have real conversations, because when you're constantly talking about sports or golf or politics or whatever, it just creates such tension and stress and everything. And I just can't even stand those conversations anymore. I'd rather talk to you about how's your marriage going? And, what are you doing? How often are you taking your wife out on dates and things like that? And guys, guys will say, you mean I'm supposed to take her on a date? It's like, dude, you're going to end up in divorce court. You need to take care of your wife. And it blows my mind that we're not having those kind of conversations. But meanwhile, we're going off and traipsing around golf course for 4 hours and talking about cigars and sports and everything else that are meaningless to the grand scheme of things when the freight train is coming down the tracks with the light in your eyeballs.
And if you don't mind if I jump in right here, Niiamah. But yeah, I love what you're saying there, Bob. Like, if we continually live on the surface with every conversation and every meeting that we have, we're not going to experience life to the deepest that we can. We just can't. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to talk about these things, to have those vulnerable questions and the conversations that really matter, because it is uncomfortable. It is shocking to some people who are so used to living on the surface and not really thinking and rewiring their minds to analyze the situation, right? Because, like, personally for me, like, I'm a very spiritual man, and I fully believe in a God that loves us and created everything. And so that's sometimes uncomfortable to talk about. Religion is sometimes uncomfortable to talk about, but it's so necessary, because what you believe shapes how you lead. That's just the matter of fact. What you believe about life, what you believe about your friends, everything, that shapes how you lead. And man, just what you're saying, like, one of the biggest things that I'm passionate about is like just loving everybody and treating them as like the best that you can, because you have no idea what they're going through. You have no idea what's beneath that surface that you're having that conversation on. So just doing good to like all people and treating them like yourself, like, that's where it starts.
I appreciate each of you here. Thank you. Thank you for playing. Thank you for playing here and choosing to take the conversation where it needs to go. Let's stay in this vein here. I think there's one of some of the things I'm thinking about as we're talking about is, for any outlier out there that is in the place of wanting to put themselves out there, all right, wanting to step into something new. And I have a distinction in my world about being visible and being seen. Right. And a lot of people come in, they're like, I want to be more visible. Can you help me get more visibility? And I think that they oftentimes miss that, like, yes, you might have more people following something or liking or viewing something, but they're not actually seeing you. I think each of you are giving us a chance to actually see you here in this conversation. So I'd like to speak to that here. And there's a part of me that wants to go and ask the question about, like, tell me a time when, back in the day. But I think that the reality is, like, you're here because you're still moving forward. Like, there's still deeper layers of visibility, deeper layers of being seen. And so what's really interesting to me would be, like, tell me about a project that you're working on right now and some of the things that, Carman, I'm glad that made you laugh. So if you're not watching this year, Carman got this. Tell me about a project you're working on right now, and then share some element of it that, like, that you feel is like the real challenge in it for you. Maybe other people will think like wouldn't even notice it, but share some component of that here with us here. Are you down and y'all down to play that way today? Awesome. Carman, is anything coming to you?
Yep. So my project is to get out and be seen and heard, because I have a book that I wrote for teachers called Teachers First, A Guide to Avoiding and Overcoming Burnout in the Classroom. And so I just came off of a retreat in Wyoming, and my current project, we'll put in quotation marks, is to get on 100 podcasts in the next 100 days so that I can really get myself out there. I'm also wanting to get myself on 100 stages that aren't podcast stages in the next 100 days too. So that's what I'm up to, because I really needed to get myself out there and take the action steps that are going to get me there. So I'm super excited to dive into that. And this is number 5
Nice.
of podcasts.
Nice.
Only 95 to go.
Only 95 to go. That doesn't seem like very many.
On that note there, right? So like what about that, like, challenges you as well? Or what about that, like, scares you here? And I want to get to that, because I think that there's both the excitement of the 100, and at the same time, I'm like, it's something different for you here. So I am curious about that.
So I feel like I'm actually on the other side of that. When I was in Wyoming, one of the biggest fears that came up for me was this fear of dying. that I had underlying a whole bunch of layers. And it was like, wow. And so I feel like I unpacked that. And now the 100 podcast actually feels easy. I just need to take the action steps. And I've got a couple of team members that are helping me do that. So there's that team support again that keeps me accountable, keeps me moving forward and taking those action steps so that I don't have to do it all on my own. I also have an amazing accountability team that are cheering me on.
Thank you for this year. Like we'll probably get to like team and systems for the end of this conversation as well, because that seems like a really important part. Thank you for like, hey, I'm glad you did the work. I'm happy that this is not a slog for you. Like you're like, I'm excited. I'm like,
I love
oh,
it.
she's actually really there. That's awesome. How about anyone else? What's a product you're working on right now? What's a challenge that you're like,
It's
you're working on?
not necessarily a product, but it's a lot like Carmen's, where it's a goal of being seen and being in conversation. And again, it kind of comes back to our conversation from the other day, Niiamah. I've set myself a goal to have 70 conversations between now and next May with men about whatever. And it doesn't have to be specific. It doesn't have to be intent. Well, it's intentional in the fact that we want to have a real conversation, right? Like we talked about a minute ago, but it can be about anything. And I'm super excited about it, but I'm also in the same vein super scared because it's a big number. And the time to get it done is tight, and my availability to get it done is also very tight. So I'm setting a very high bar, but it's exciting in a good way.
Yeah, I can jump in here and talk about the project that I've been working on recently and that I'm passionate about. So with my podcast, the Audacious Podcast, we just entered into a new season that I've been producing and putting out. I see like each season as its own project. And with this new one, it's been crazy because I've been taking it to a deeper level than ever before. You know, in the past, we've talked about commitment, discipline, but recently we're talking about how do we heal from the scars of life. So we're talking about depression, anxiety, and even how do you forgive yourself? If you're holding a grudge against yourself, how do you let go of that? Almost nobody talks about these things. And so, you know, we're talking about like the desire to be seen. A challenge that I had there was actually I have like a desire to not be seen for a while because I love photography, I love cinematography, so I'm always the guy like behind the camera, like capturing moments for other people. And so just in this new season, in this new project, I really started feeling like I should be the one that's being seen and taking leadership there. And that was tough. That was tough because I didn't want the spotlight to be me. I wanted the spotlight to be the conversations and the deeper connections that we're building there. But that was a challenge that I just had to say, okay, I'm not used to being in front of the camera, but it's going to happen. It's going to start. And man, those first couple episodes, rough, I'll tell you. But once you start doing it, like whenever you start something new, it's always rough. You just learn from experience. And so the challenge going forward from there is like having these conversations outside of the studio, outside of recording episodes, because it shouldn't just be limited to those four walls. This should be something that I take with the people that I meet wherever I go.
You know, as Carmen and I had connected there on doing 1,000,000,001 things, I've got all kind of projects, right? Whether it's, you know, the book that I'm working on, the wellness program where we're doing some creative film stuff. And but I honestly, the biggest project in my life right now is me. Like, and that's just being real. And it's a few small backstory. As being a behavior scientist, I love to observe humans and I recognize patterns. Like that's one of my strengths. But I also flip it inward and recognize my own patterns. And I love challenges, not in the sense of an obstacle, but I mean in like, I'm going to do 75-day hard. I'm going to meditate for 100 days straight. Like that is how I like to live, in a challenge, boundary, boom, 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 next, next, next. And there are two challenges that I'm in currently that they're a struggle for me. I won't lie. The first is being more patient and letting go of time, as Carmen was talking about. And that's in part, I realize, because I have three boys. My oldest is a sophomore in high school. He's got 2.5 years left. My middle one is about to start high school in a year and a half. Like you look up and you go, wow, really, where did it go? He's got a girlfriend, right? Yeah, I've got this young lady coming to my house and eating dinner with us. And I just being like, I don't have to rush and get all these projects done. I can still, let me just stay here in this moment and enjoy this. And the other one, and Talon's right, talking about spirituality or religious affiliation is really difficult. I have no religious affiliation, but I am very much unified and connected spiritually. And so when the word God is used, I don't think of it in the sense of Bible. I just think of it in the sense of one, a singularity. And I heard someone say, go a week if you can, just 1 week, and try to treat every person you come into contact with as God in disguise. Really hard, really, really difficult, right? Even just yesterday at football practice for my sons, where the coach is just saying something to me that I know is inaccurate and is starting to annoy me, and just asking myself, like, if I knew this was God in disguise, what would I do differently? And actually, what does that look like? Would I still do exactly what I'm doing and being annoyed right now at that moment, going, God, like, come on, stop it. Right. But just understanding, like, as Talon was also mentioned earlier, treating those the way you would want to be treated. And then recognizing too, like, if I was being annoying, I'd want someone to tell me, you're being annoying. Stop. Right. Just stop. Leave me alone. Because I respect that honesty. So those have been the two biggest challenges for me right now, is working on myself, because in doing those things, I think it shines through in the other work that I do that is out there for everyone else. And so, yeah, that's outside of the 1,000,001 projects I got going that are sitting underneath my glass desk here, as you know, and boards and things to check off. That's the challenge of the challenge.
I appreciate y'all and bringing this in here. Like, that space, the space you're talking to actually like really resonates deeply, and creating both the external results, but also looking to see like, hey, for what's happening internally here for me to go through this. Yeah. And outliers, I'm going to invite you here in this conversation to participate. Right? There's two things you can do. One, if this conversation is really resonating with you, or you know that there's someone out there that like would really benefit from this, please share this episode with them. Bring them into the conversation. Let us live this conversation beyond here. Right? And two, there's like, just take some time right now, just check for yourself, like, what's something that you're getting from this conversation? What's something you want to go and like implement in? I'm hearing this and thinking to myself, what's a challenge that I can put in? Like, I love like 100 conversations in 100 days, 70 conversations by May. Like, like I'm like, oh, that is something that actually works for me, to go in and set these kind of like these kind of goals and play with it. But then also to look inside and say, hey, what, like, Antonio just brought up the example of like, what if, and asking that question every day and living through that question, and having that be a lens that you come through. So I just want to make sure we don't miss this along the way. So y'all, we're going to be starting to wrap up here in conversation, but I do want to get to something that, Carman, you brought up a few different times, which is around team and systems and support. And I think that, coupling that with like having a massive purpose and mission in life, but also being really multi-interested, multi-talented, and like going at things, I'm really curious for any of you to talk about some of the things that have worked for you in terms of being able to build more support, and whatever your way of building support is, to help you be able to keep the various projects you have, keep the various objectives you're going for moving, while also staying good and whole within. Anyone have anything they want to bring on that?
I'll
Yeah,
just
Antonio,
say,
please.
I'll just say this, in that, and Bob brought it up about men not asking for help. I'm biggest culprit. I don't ask for help for anything. I got it. Oh, my the car, some part of my car is busted up. I'm not a mechanic. I'll YouTube it, get the tool, I'll fix it. Right? I need a TV stand. If the measurements are not proper, I'm going to measure myself, go to Home Depot, build it, learn how to stain wood. Like, I don't, right? And so I guess to your question, that's not really to your question. The thing that I'm hoping people recognize here is, when you are around minded individuals like everyone in this room, there is a peace and calm that comes forth. No one here is agitated. No one here's heart is pounding. Everyone is relaxed, smiling, head nodding. And it's not to say that your world should always be peaceful. Chaos is going to ensue. It's inherent. It's an inherent opposite that's necessary for it to exist, right? But that when you do find your support group, it's a calming world. Like it really, really is. So if you haven't found your support group, find it, right? Go out there and look for it and let them look for you, because it brings a level of peace to your world that is unmatched.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that because I was going to say, where I get my accountability is my coach. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be on this podcast right now. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the goal of having 70 conversations. So just having somebody in your corner that pushes you and will guide you, like Antonio said, in a calm way, not, pound and fist. Everybody thinks of coaches as, pound the fist on the table or yelling, go run 50-yard sprints or whatever. That's not what it's about. It's about unending support, non-judgmental support is actually probably the best thing to do with it. And just know that to hold your space for you to get where you want to go from where you are at this moment is absolutely the most powerful thing I've ever had experience in my life.
Appreciate that, Top. Talon, Carman, anything from you? Yeah, let's go, Talon.
Yeah, I want to say here that one of the biggest things to building your support team and building that accountability is don't hide what you're struggling with. Don't try to be the perfect person that has it all under control. Because like you're saying, Antonio, like I'm a guy, and so I want to have that image that life is going good. I don't want people to worry about me. I don't want people to see like the areas that I might be struggling with. Because sometimes pride can get in the way. But pride is the ultimate killer of accountability. Because once you are prideful and try to think that, oh yeah, I have everything under control, everybody else thinks that. And so everybody else doesn't see the areas of life where you were saying, Bob, like where they can challenge you, where they can push you to be better and to become a better person, to live a more fulfilling life. And so you just got to be vulnerable. You got to be careful with it and be intentional with who you're vulnerable to and who you've seen that models the people, the person that you want to be. And then with that, there has to be that space that you initiate or create, and they might initiate it with you. And if they do, then don't run away from that. Embrace it.
I love that. I'm going to go in a totally different direction because we have to have fun. We have to have fun. We need to play with it. We need to do fun things with our people, with our accountability people, and what we're up to in the world. Because I know, like, when you talk about those 100 podcasts or 100 push-ups or whatever your goal is with those numbers, it can get really intense. And so how do we play with it and have fun with it? And also plan it, right? Sometimes we just get stuck in the, it's going to happen, but it's just like, when on your calendar are you going to, go on a date with your wife or your partner? When are you going to take some days off and get yourself out of the office? When are you going to spend some time with your kids because you don't see them very much anymore? So for me, it's like planning is so huge, because if I don't plan it, I look around and go, oh, it's the end of December and I didn't do A, B, and C. That were the fun things. So for me, I've really learned to plan the fun things in first. Like I know I'm going to Mexico beginning of March. That's all I know. I don't have details or anything like that, but I know that that's in my calendar. And more importantly, almost, so does my team. The team that I live with in my house, they know when I'm planning things, and they know when I'm going out just to hang out with the girls and have fun. So I feel like that fun aspect is so important, because I think that's what we're here to do, is play in this world, whatever it looks like for us and whatever we're passionate about.
I'm taking that and I write that down. Play and plan. Like up until this moment, they had all seemed like opposites to me. Like, how can I be playful and have a plan? And now I'm like, oh yeah, I got to play even more when I have a plan. Like it actually is something that's a conduit to it.
Well, and it's really interesting. I've heard it described like a river. We made a reference to a river at the beginning of this. Is the plan is the banks of the river, and the water is where it flows. And sometimes the water goes over the banks And sometimes the plan changes, but when we have that structure, it allows us to flow within it and have that fun.
Oh, I love that. All right. For someone who likes things to just be at times, it's really quite a lovely message. We're going to wrap up here with one last question. And what I want to do is make sure that every outlier here gets a chance to be able to continue the journey with you. So I'll invite you here. We're going to go to every single person on this. And I'd like you to share the best way for people to continue down with you. What's the best way for them to go through? We'll also have show notes and have links and everything, but I want them to hear for anyone that's just listening. One. And then two, in the same response, share with us an insight that you got, so a takeaway that you got. We all like learn something. It could be from, but like how are you leaving this conversation differently than when you came in? And the answer could be, I'm not. This was fun, but I like that's fine, right? There's space for that as well. But I want to wrap us up with that over here, and I'm going to go random order this time. Look at this. Yeah, I'm going to go Bob, then Talon, then Carman, then Antonio. That's how we're going to do this time. Look at this, changing it up. Bob, well, hit us with this. How can people dive more into your world? And what was an insight you got from this conversation?
Yeah, one very, very simple to get into my world. It's menbecomingbettermen.com, www.menbecomingbettermen.com. Very simple. I got all my links there. I got some freebies, some giveaways, how you can connect with me, my mastermind group, all that kind of stuff. And then the one thing I took away from this is I think Antonio said it earlier. It's just that the power of being in a room with people that are into personal growth, personal development, leadership, all those things. Every time I get an opportunity to do that, it just strengthens my resolve to keep going, and it's amazing.
I'm glad you were here, Bob. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah. So of course, like, you can reach out to me anytime, talon.bolme@yahoo.com, personal email. If you want to find out more about the podcast, it's The Audacious Podcast with Talon Bolme. And you can contact us anytime at theaudaciouspod@gmail.com. And I want to say, like, what I'm taking away from this, I'm like merging together two concepts that Bob and Carman mentioned, just with Bob and how he mentioned like quantifying goals, right? Adding a number to that, 100 conversations, like that gives us drive. That gives us a goal that we're reaching to. It's not just this concept of, oh, I want to have more conversations, because more is ambiguous. And so I love that. But also what you said, Carman, like not forgetting to play and have fun with it. Because if we forget to do that, then it's just going to be a legalistic mindset to where we're striving for something all the time and we forget to enjoy life, which is what we're meant to. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carman.
So you can connect with me at carman@healthyteachers.ca. I have to think about that for a minute. Healthyteachers.ca. You can get a free chapter of my book from there. You can book a conversation with me. I'd love to have a conversation with you just to see how we can connect and have a meaningful conversation if that's what you're looking for. And my takeaway is just to be reminded that it's okay to do all of the crazy things that I do, like all of the different avenues that I'm up to. So thanks, Antonio, for commenting on that and going, oh yeah, I love all these things and I can still do all these things.
Thank you so much, Carman.
Niiamah, you read my mind on this because I've already got it typed in. I didn't know if we were staying on afterwards. And I was like, I don't know if it goes out to his listeners. Great if they contact me, but I wanted to share my email and name with the people here today, right? So it's in the chat if you want it, take it. So you can get a hold of me at coachdoc@muchlovealways.com, at onecoachdoc, ONE, for any of the social media handles, and then Doc's Daily Dose podcast. I think what I have taken away from today is that all of us are right where we're supposed to be this morning. Right. And you constantly question the moves you're going to make. Is this thing, do I do this? Do I go here? Do I take this time out? Do I plan this? Do I put this on the calendar? Is this worth my time? Should I be doing something else? Am I in the right direction? And, just hearing others and myself walk through some of the questions that you shared and share our own thoughts it's just another sign and reassurance that we're all where we're supposed to be.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm grateful that you chose to be here today. I'm glad that you each have each other, and thank you for taking the time to share your experiences and to really share with me and others here today. I appreciate all of you. I'm looking forward to everything that comes up from here.
Thank you for having us.